What if the person looking back at you from the mirror is only half the story? What if, somewhere beyond the limits of what we can see, a near-identical version of yourself is living a life strikingly similar, and yet dramatically different? This is not the setup of a science fiction movie or a paradox lost in imaginary realms. It's a question emerging at the edge of scientific inquiry and philosophical wonder, where ideas about identity, choice, and reality begin to intertwine. In the quiet hours of the night, when the world grows still and our minds wander, we often feel an unsettling sense of other possibilities, roads we never took, moments that could have changed everything. Now, imagine those possibilities aren't just abstract thoughts but actual reflections spinning off into parallel realities, stretching into dimensions we cannot yet access or fully comprehend. Current scientific models suggest that the universe may be far more intricate than a single thread of time and space. Instead, it might be a complex tapestry woven from countless divergent paths. According to the framework of quantum mechanics, when particles make a choice between different states, they don't just randomly pick one, they potentially branch into multiple outcomes, spawning parallel trajectories of existence. The implications ripple outwards, nudging us to consider that versions of you might exist, living lives shaped by decisions you never made. But this is not simply a comforting idea that every choice you mourn has been made better elsewhere. Rather, it's a profound and unsettling possibility that your other self could be walking paths you barely recognize, encountering challenges and triumphs entirely alien to your own. What might it mean to acknowledge the presence of these alternate selves? Could their experiences remain forever inaccessible, shadows out of reach? Or could they somehow influence the continuum we inhabit, subtly altering the fabric of our own reality? Researchers examining the strange behaviors of particles in experiments like the double-slit experiment hint at the universe's fundamental uncertainty, teasing the notion that multiple realities might be interwoven in ways we fail to grasp. Yet such ideas remind us of how tentative our understanding remains, at best, fragmented glimpses through a dim window. This raises deeper questions about identity too. If there are thousands, millions, or even infinite versions of you, is there a core self that remains? Or does identity dissolve into a spectrum of lives, experiences, and choices, no single version more real than another? The paradox here is striking. To be ourselves might require entire worlds where we fail, succeed, lose, and love differently. And perhaps, in those worlds, the other yous grapple with the very same doubts and fears that you carry right now. As we embark further into this exploration of parallel selves and simulated existence, prepare for a journey that blends emerging science with age-old existential questions. This is not just theory, it's an invitation to reimagine what it means to be alive, to have agency, and to exist within an architecture of endless potential. What if your reality is but one reflection among infinite mirrors, each holding a story waiting to be told? And what darkness might lie in knowing that a version of you, somewhere else in the cosmos, is living a life shaped by different choices, unknown tragedies, or unspoken joys, forever out of reach but silently parallel? The simulation theory may have opened the door to questioning our reality itself, but the parallel universe hypothesis takes us deeper, challenging the way we think about the self and the fragile uniqueness of our own singular life. It is here, in this mysterious overlap of science and philosophy, that we find one of the most haunting questions of all: what if another version of you exists? And what happens when you inevitably look yourself in the eye? The idea that another version of you might exist, living, breathing, making choices in a reality parallel to yours, invites a reflection that feels both profoundly unsettling and strangely intimate. But before we wander deeper into this mystery, let us ground ourselves in the emerging scientific frameworks that make such a possibility at least plausible, if not inevitable. According to the principles underlying modern physics, the universe we observe is not necessarily the entirety of existence but could be one slice of an unimaginably vast, complex multiverse. This concept arises from attempts to reconcile quantum mechanics and cosmology, two pillars of science that describe realms so different yet so interwoven. Quantum mechanics reveals a world at the smallest scales where particles do not have fixed states until measured, instead existing as clouds of probabilities. This strange behavior has led some scientists to propose that every quantum event could spawn a branching of realities, each reflecting a different outcome. This idea, often called the many worlds interpretation, suggests that reality is a constantly proliferating tree of diverging histories. From the turn you took this morning, to a whispered word left unsaid, countless parallel timelines might be unfolding somewhere in the cosmic vastness. The implication is that infinitely many versions of who you are might be playing out lives both eerily similar and staggeringly alien. Yet, this is no simple picture of doubles or shadowy doppelgangers. The fabric of these alternate realities could be woven from entirely different laws of physics or subtle variations in the constants that underpin matter and energy. Some models of cosmology suggest that the multiverse is structured in bubbles, each universe a separate bubble with its own distinct parameters. Within some of these bubbles, the conditions might be so unlike our own that the notion of you as we understand it becomes almost meaningless. But in others, there could be replicas of Earth, copies of our minds and memories, divergent only by a detail, a spark, a seemingly trivial chance event. What makes this scenario more than just poetic speculation is that it arises naturally from the mathematics describing the cosmos. Inflationary theory, a leading model of the universe's birth, points to an ongoing creation of space-time pockets effectively spawning new universes beyond our perception. Meanwhile, string theory, with its suggestion of multiple dimensions curled up beyond direct observation, hints that what we call reality might be just one level of a multidimensional hierarchy, each layer hosting its own version of existence. Yet, despite these scientific bridges, the question lingers: how do these parallel realms interact, if at all, and can we ever become aware of them? For now, our instruments remain silent on definitive evidence. But intriguingly, some experiments in quantum mechanics point towards subtle, unexplained phenomena, glimmers that hint at influences beyond our own universe's boundaries. These are whispers on the edge of scientific knowledge, encouraging inquiry but demanding caution. Beyond the physics, the concept of multiple yous scattered across parallel universes touches something deeply human, the desire for meaning and understanding in the face of vast uncertainty. It compels us to consider what it means to live one singular life when countless alternatives might pulse through the quantum currents of possibility. Are these parallel existences a source of hope, a cosmic safety net, or do they confront us with an ethical labyrinth, where the value of each choice is magnified by its infinite echoes? Moreover, this emerging framework challenges the classical view of identity as a fixed and unique narrative. If aspects of ourselves can exist independently, molded by different circumstances, how do memory, consciousness, and self-awareness fit into this sprawling mosaic? Scientists remain divided on these questions, as neuroscience grapples with the mysteries of the mind and physics navigates the enigmatic terrain of reality's layers. In contemplating these ideas, we are reminded that science does not provide easy answers but opens doors into deeper philosophical territory. The possibility of parallel versions of ourselves forces a confrontation with solitude and connection, freedom and determinism, certainty and mystery. It is a reminder that our experience of being here and now is both miraculous and fragile, perched on the edge of what is known and the vast unknown. As we continue this journey into the simulation hypothesis and parallel universes, this foundational background sets the stage for the profound and often disquieting exploration ahead. We stand at the threshold of a narrative where the universe and existence itself is not a singular storyline but a symphony of infinite variations, each with its own melody, each perhaps holding another you, staring back across an unfathomable divide. Imagine, momentarily, that you awaken not to the familiar contours of your own bedroom, but to a room strikingly similar, yet different in subtle ways. The clock ticks just 1 second behind your own. The scent of a distant rainstorm lingers in the air, though outside your window, the sun blazes brightly. You rise, expecting the life you know, yet find yourself navigating choices and circumstances both eerily familiar and surprisingly foreign. This is the unsettling landscape that the idea of parallel selves invites us to explore, not just abstract doubles drifting in far-flung realms, but versions of you living lives that diverge from yours in directions profound and minute. Contemporary physics and cosmology draw us into this labyrinth with a set of intriguing frameworks that, while speculative, compel attention. Take the notion rooted in quantum mechanics known as the many-worlds interpretation. Unlike traditional quantum theory that collapses possibilities into one observed reality, many worlds suggests every quantum event spawns a branching universe and endless tree of realities where every conceivable outcome unfolds. In this sprawling cosmic tableau, you might simultaneously be a sculptor, a wanderer, a scientist, and a stranger to yourself, each identity manifest in a corresponding universe. According to this interpretation, the universe we perceive is but one thread woven into an infinite multiverse tapestry, where parallel versions of you are engaged in lives as diverse as the paths your choices could have taken. Yet here, the theory steps beyond the domain of physical phenomena and plunges into the realm of consciousness. How would a parallel self experience reality? Would their memories resonate with your own, or would they be utterly distinct, shaped by different experiences and decisions? Neuroscientists propose that memory is more than a static archive, it is an active, reconstructive process. If that is true, each version of you in these hypothetical branches could harbor a unique narrative, a varying self-perception molded by alternate histories and environments. The delicate interplay between brain states and external realities suggests that identity is not a fixed point, but rather a shifting landscape. Some cognitive scientists speculate this fragmentation might manifest even within our own minds, hinting at the paradoxical notion that you might already exist as multiple overlapping identities, even without the need for cosmic parallels. Diving deeper still, imagine the implications if these parallel selves were not confined to the distant theoretical multiverse but instead somehow entwined with us nutritionally, if the echoes of their decisions influenced our own reality in subtle ways. There are speculative models in physics emerging from the fringes of string theory and quantum gravity that hint at the possibility of quantum entanglement not only between particles but between macroscopic systems or even conscious beings. If such links exist, it would mean that our choices, emotions, even fears could ripple outward, touching unseen versions of ourselves. The boundary between self and other would blur, transforming the solitary experience of consciousness into a shared resonance across universes. To ground this further in an example from recent scientific discourse, consider the work around quantum immortality, a controversial and highly speculative hypothesis inspired by the many worlds framework. It proposes that an individual might continue to exist in some branch where survival occurs, no matter how improbable, effectively creating a form of subjective immortality across parallel worlds. Though this concept teeters on the edges of metaphysics and remains far from accepted science, it paints a haunting picture. If another version of you persists through every major turning point, what becomes of your sense of mortality, identity, and meaning? How would living alongside countless alternates who might endure your failures or triumphs redefine the human condition? Moreover, there is a provocative experiment ongoing in quantum computing and information theory that nudges us closer to addressing such enigmas. Researchers are beginning to simulate quantum systems that mimic branching realities within computational matrices, revealing that different outcomes can be computed and observed simultaneously in controlled environments. While not an actual multiverse, these quantum simulations offer insights that pressure the classical boundaries of individuality and causality. They remind us that, under the hood of what we consider a fixed reality, there might be layers yet to be understood, layers that mirror the dynamic, proliferating possibilities of existence itself. On a more tangible scale, the psychological and emotional weight of these possibilities cannot be overlooked. The idea that an alternate you facing different choices, suffering different consequences, living a separate thread of existence exists parallel to your own experience creates a silent dialogue within. It muses on regret and redemption, on what was lost or gained by the unique sequence of your decisions. This becomes not merely a theoretical curiosity but a profound meditation on the consequences and randomness that shape personal destiny. If the universe does cradle such mirrors of the self, it forces us to reckon with the mystery of our authenticity and the nature of our true self. In the end, these ideas leave us suspended between awe and unease. The suggestion that an unsuspected other you might be living, breathing, perhaps even dreaming just beyond the reach of our perception challenges the comforting notion of our singularity. It destabilizes our conventional narratives of time and identity, revealing a cosmos far richer and more bewildering than traditionally imagined. Science, in this context, serves less as a definitive guide and more as an invitation to step into the unknown, to peer beyond the familiar fabric of reality, and to confront the possibility that who we are might be only one note in an infinite symphony of selves. Imagine for a moment that the universe you inhabit is but one frame in an endless film reel, each frame capturing a distinct variation of reality, subtly shifted or radically transformed. Current scientific inquiry, while yet unable to offer definitive proof, paints a cosmos where the fabric of reality is not a single, seamless sheet, but a labyrinthine network of branching paths, worlds that diverge from one another with every possible decision, interaction, or chance event. This vision emerges from the forefront of theoretical physics, particularly in the study of quantum mechanics and cosmology, where the peculiar laws that govern the subatomic world hint at a staggering complexity beyond our immediate perception. According to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, one of the more compelling yet speculative frameworks, every quantum event, every flicker of possibility in the dance of particles, could spawn its own universe, a parallel reality unfolding alongside our own. Picture a moment as simple as flipping a coin. In one universe, it lands heads, in another, tails. The theory suggests that both outcomes play out independently but simultaneously, birthing universes that share our history up to that moment, then diverge irrevocably. While such a concept may sound like science fiction, it is rooted in efforts to reconcile the strange behavior of particles with the deterministic laws that govern larger scales. Observations of quantum superposition and entanglement, where particles exist in multiple states or remain mysteriously linked across distances, fuel these interpretations. They hint that beneath the apparent randomness lies a multiverse teeming with intertwined possibilities. Extending beyond the microscopic realm, cosmological models based on inflationary theory propose that our universe might be one bubble among infinitely many, each bubble universe with its own laws of physics and initial conditions. These bubbles could coexist within a larger multiverse, floating like islands in an endless cosmic ocean. The implications are profound. An alternate you might not only differ in decisions made but could exist in a universe where the fundamental constants of nature vary, allowing for drastically different forms of life or perhaps none at all. In theoretical physics, the idea that these parallel realities might be inaccessible to one another remains a sort of cosmic boundary condition. The speed of light and causality constrain interactions, ensuring each universe remains self-contained, forming isolated bubbles in a vast cosmic froth. However, some speculative frameworks propose that subtle influences, echoes or quantum whispers, might occasionally bleed through, hinting at other realms beyond our sensory horizon. One fascinating manifestation of this is found in the concept of decoherence, a process that explains how our classical world emerges from quantum possibilities. Decoherence essentially collapses a spectrum of probable outcomes into a single observed reality. Yet, the process's intrinsic nature sparks questions. Does it truly extinguish all alternative outcomes, or do those alternatives continue to unfold elsewhere, in parallel threads? Research in quantum computing and information theory now explores whether these multiple outcomes can be harnessed or detected indirectly, hinting that the multiverse might leave faint fingerprints waiting to be uncovered. Beyond the physics, there is a deeper, more unsettling philosophical dimension. If multiple versions of you exist, not just as shadows but as real entities experiencing their own lives separate from yours, what does this say about identity and free will? Is each version equally you, or do they become distinct beings the moment their experiences diverge? Cognitive science, with its exploration of consciousness and memory, wrestles with these questions. Some models suggest the self is less a fixed entity and more a fluid narrative emerging from countless neural interactions, adaptable to different paths and realities. Neuroscience has also uncovered phenomena like dissociative identity disorder, where multiple identities coexist within a single brain, challenging conventional notions of a singular self. While not a direct analogy to parallel universes, such cases illuminate how identity itself can be fragmented and multiply realized within one mind, offering a metaphorical glimpse into what a multiverse of selves might entail. On the edge of this scientific and philosophical frontier lies the enigma of dreaming and altered states of consciousness. Could these internal experiences be faint windows into other realities, or are they purely imaginative constructs? Some speculative hypotheses propose that dreaming brains might momentarily resonate with other quantum states or alternative versions of consciousness existing elsewhere. Although these ideas remain far from empirical verification, they underscore the profound mystery of human experience and its possible entanglement with the greater, unseen cosmos. Moreover, as technology advances, scientists are exploring whether simulated realities could themselves generate multiverse-like branching. In this scenario, a simulated consciousness, designed with complex decision-making capabilities, might instantiate a spectrum of alternate experiences with digital fidelity. This raises provocative questions about the nature of our own reality. If a universe simulation can give rise to many divergent selves, how can we be certain our existence is singular or original? The potential ethical and existential ramifications also demand contemplation. If parallel selves exist, facing different fates and living out different dramas, does this diminish the value or uniqueness of our choices? Or does it magnify the preciousness of our current path, the narrative thread we find ourselves in? The implications spill into fields from moral philosophy to psychology, as humanity grapples with meaning within an infinitely expansive cosmic stage. While the evidence remains elusive, and much of this territory speculative, the pursuit itself reveals our deepest striving, to understand where we fit in the grand scheme, to grasp the subtle architecture of reality, and to sense, perhaps faintly, the presence of other whispers of ourselves in the dark. In embracing this uncertainty, science acts less as a map with clear borders, and more as a lantern casting light into an ever-widening labyrinth, a labyrinth where the shadows may be other versions of us, watching, wondering, living. In the quiet moments when the world slips away and our minds drift beyond our immediate surroundings, we often confront the fragile boundary between what is known and what lies just out of reach, between waking life and the enigmatic depths of consciousness. It is here, at this liminal edge, where questions about the nature of self become more than abstract musings and touch something fundamentally profound. What if the essence of who we are is neither singular nor fixed, but an echo across dimensions, streams of consciousness flowing simultaneously along countless divergent paths? Philosophy has long wrestled with the notion of identity as a fluid construct. The ancient thought experiment of the ship of Theseus asks, if every plank and sail is replaced over time, does the ship remain the same? By analogy, if there exist other yous making different choices, living parallel lives shaped by altered circumstances, can any one self claim absolute uniqueness? Some thinkers propose that identity might not be a rigid monolith but a weave, threaded through a multitude of realities, each strand a different version of existence, each variation a glimpse into the infinite tapestry of possibility. Modern physics and cognitive science now intertwine with these age-old philosophical inquiries, suggesting that consciousness itself may not be as singular as our everyday experience insists. According to some interpretations of quantum mechanics, reality at its most fundamental level behaves in ways that defy classical intuition. Particles don't possess definite states until observed, and multiple outcomes may coexist in a superposition. One speculative reading suggests that consciousness could, in some sense, align with these superpositions, untethered from a singular trajectory. If so, the mind might function not within a single thread of reality but across many. This would mean that the I who sits here now is only one facet of a broader, intricate self, dispersed across unseen continuums. Beyond the scientific realm, this proposition carries weighty implications for how we understand meaning and purpose. If countless versions of a person exist, each leading lives both familiar and foreign, does it make our choices less or more significant? On one hand, the idea that every path taken or not taken plays out somewhere else might erode the feeling that our decisions are unique or consequential. Yet, on the other, the awareness of parallel existences might reveal a new layer of profundity, that the very act of choosing manifests reality itself. Each decision becomes a seed sown into the fertile soil of a branching multiverse, a commitment to a particular version of life that hosts joys, regrets, struggles, and triumphs impossible elsewhere. This perspective transforms loneliness into a paradoxical bridge, the sense of isolation grounding our self-awareness, yet simultaneously hinting at countless other self-states infinitely interwoven but inaccessible to direct perception. Psychological inquiry often touches on similar tensions. Dreams, déjà vu, and moments of profound intuition can feel like faint echoes from these parallel lives, fleeting windows through which we brush against alternative selves. While rigorous science remains cautious to label these experiences as evidence for other worlds, the poetic resonance is unmistakable. The mind may be more a receiver than simply a generator, catching flickers of realities coexisting just beyond our sensory horizon. In spiritual traditions across the ages, too, one finds reflections of this unity in multiplicity. The self is sometimes described as a drop in an ocean, with innumerable other drops forming the vast, interconnected whole. Here, individual distinctions ripple and shift, and consciousness expands beyond limited boundaries. Whether metaphor, mystical insight, or proto-scientific intuition, these views complement the emerging idea that our personal existence may be but one chord in a symphony far grander and deeper than previously imagined. Yet, this framing also poses unsettling questions about responsibility and consequence. If parallel versions of ourselves face distinct outcomes, some tragic, others triumphant, where does accountability lie? Is moral choice undermined by a cosmos in which every possibility is played out? Or does acknowledging the plurality of selves compel a deeper ethical vigilance, a recognition that our version of self is not a lone player but part of a complex network that echoes across reality? These inquiries challenge not only philosophy and theology but invite the reshaping of how we engage with daily life, urging empathy that transcends singular perspectives. Ultimately, contemplating the possibility of other versions of ourselves existing alongside us stretches the boundaries of imagination and reason alike. It invites us to experience identity not as a fixed point but as a flowing, multifaceted phenomenon mirroring the complex nature of reality itself. In this light, the quest to understand consciousness in parallel selves is less about finding definitive answers and more about embracing the inherent mystery of being. A mystery rich with emotional texture, philosophical depth, and scientific intrigue, one that continues to inspire wonder and awe for the human spirit navigating the immense, shadowy architecture of existence. As shadows lengthen and night descends, the idea lingers that somewhere, beyond given space and time, versions of ourselves persist, each living out their own stories, silently bound to ours by invisible threads. In the quiet, one senses their presence not as a threat but as a profound reminder that the self is vast, layered, and endlessly mysterious, forever tracing the contours of a cosmos that refuses to be fully grasped, yet invites us to explore its depths with humility and awe. Imagine waking one day to find that the reflection in the mirror is not quite your own. Not as you expected, not as you remember. Rather than a simple echo, it is a shadow, a flicker of something both familiar and profoundly alien. This unsettling sense, something beside you, yet impossibly distant, forms the heart of darker speculations within the realm of parallel universes. What if another version of you exists, not just as a benign twin, but as a fractured self, living a life warped by different choices, different circumstances, or different twists in the unfolding of time? The theory suggests these parallel selves may not merely be theoretical constructs, but entities experiencing reality on divergent planes where identity, intention, and even memory splinter into new, haunting patterns. Scientists approach this idea with caution, for the implications ripple far beyond mere curiosity. According to certain interpretations of quantum mechanics and the mathematical frameworks underlying the multiverse, every decision, every chance event creates a branching path. While this paints a tantalizing image of infinite possibilities, it also evokes darker scenarios where fragments of self become lost, trapped, or distorted in realms unreachable by our natural senses, or worse, places in which selfhood warps into forms unrecognizable or hostile. Consider the chilling possibility nested within these ideas, that some versions of ourselves might be caught in realities experiencing suffering or decay, isolated from the familiar flow of causality. Current models in cosmology hint at the existence of bubble universes, disconnected islands of existence governed by divergent physical laws. Within such a bubble, a copy of you could be living under conditions so alien as to transform your identity into something alien and impermanent, a ghost of who you were and what you might have been. What would it mean, then, if certain versions of us carry the weight of choices never reconciled, destinies derailed? Our emotional resonance with these dark selves deepens when we consider emerging neuroscience alongside the physics of consciousness. Some scientists speculate that consciousness may not be confined to singular timelines but could somehow flicker between multiple strands of existence. If so, moments of déjà vu or unexplained intuition could be faint whispers from versions of ourselves trapped or trying desperately to communicate across these divides. A particularly unsettling thought emerges from the realm of black hole physics and the holographic principle, which conjectures that all information absorbed by a black hole, potentially including fragments of consciousness, could be preserved on its event horizon, encoded in a distorted form. What if certain versions of ourselves aren't simply living parallel lives, but have become, in part, encoded as cryptic patterns within cosmic phenomena we only barely understand? While deeply speculative, the poetic poignancy of such a scenario provokes a haunting dialogue between identity, loss, and the unknowable vastness of existence. Philosophers, too, wrestle with these dark reflections of the self. Is identity resilient enough to endure splitting and scattering across infinite realities? Or does the existence of these fractured selves imply a fundamental fragility, that what we call I is a fragile thread, easily unraveled by the cosmic loom of possibility? These inquiries suggest a universe not only ripe with mystery but permeated by a kind of existential vulnerability. This vulnerability manifests in another way, the shadow of ethical isolation. If an alternate you experiences a life marred by suffering, tragedy, or moral failure, what responsibility, if any, do you bear for that outcome? Some thinkers warn of a creeping nihilism that could seep into consciousness if the vastness of parallel selves leads to detachment and emotional distancing born from the overwhelming scale of what might be. Conversely, the recognition of this interconnected multiplicity might ignite the very opposite, a profound urgency to act with kindness and integrity, not only for our singular lives but for the unseen and unknowable others whose fates mirror ours. A chilling example from speculative fiction, but no less provocative, imagines the scenario where encountering a parallel self is possible, a moment of dangerous convergence. What if a meeting between two incompatible versions threatens the fabric of reality itself? Some interpretations of the many worlds theory imply that interactions across universes could trigger unpredictable consequences, perhaps even collapsing the delicate superpositions that sustain their coexistence. The fact that our current science cannot exclude such possibilities adds a layer of eerie suspense to the study of parallel selves, not merely as abstract philosophical musings but as potential forks in the ongoing narrative of existence. The language we use to describe these possibilities is inevitably poetic because it dwells in the realm of the unknown. From the quiet corners of theoretical physics to the surreal landscapes of human consciousness, the notion of other selves is both a balm and a torment, an invitation to explore the vast labyrinth within and beyond ourselves, and a reminder of the mysterious shadowlands where identity may fracture, fade, or twist into forms beyond recognition. In this darker terrain, the idea of self becomes a fragile beam of light refracted through unseen prisms, sometimes illuminating paths of hope and sometimes casting shadows dense with questions. As science continues to probe the boundaries of reality, the unsettling prospect of parallel selves challenges us to redefine not only who we are but how we confront the myriad possibilities of lives untold, destinies unfulfilled, and selves lost in the labyrinthine cosmos. What if, beyond the comforting narratives of completeness and unity, an echo of you wanders in the twilight between worlds, forever close yet unbearably distant, existing as a haunting enigma woven into the very fabric of the universe? This darkness, dense with mystery, is where science, philosophy, and imagination converge, compelling us to look inward and beyond, seeking answers that may forever elude us, yet deepen our wonder at the profound complexity of being. As we stand now on the precipice of what is known and peer into the shadows of what might lie just beyond, the idea that another version of you exists, one forged by choices made differently, by moments lived under alternate stars, lingers with a profound gravity. It is not merely a question for the curious mind or a speculative novelist, but a veritable crossroads where science brushes up against something deeply personal and ineffable. Some physicists propose that the universe, or perhaps the multiverse, could contain endless variations of reality, each unfolding like a leaf in an infinite cosmic tome. According to interpretations of quantum mechanics and cosmology, such multiplicities are not impossible, even if they are beyond the reach of current observational evidence. The implications ripple beyond formulas and experiments, touching the core of what it means to be an individual in a universe that may be far stranger than we allow ourselves to imagine. Imagine, for a moment, a life lived in quiet solitude, shaped by a single defining decision, a career path embraced, a love forsaken, or a dream pursued. Somewhere, perhaps, a nearly identical life unfolds but diverges at that very junction. This other self may walk through a world familiar yet alien, a life both connected and severed from yours in ways science can only hint at. The resonance of that thought can be unsettling. Are we truly alone in our experience, or do the threads of countless alternate selves entwine invisibly with our existence? It raises questions that are not only about reality but about identity. If an alternate you has chosen a path radically different, does that diminish your life or expand the scope of meaning? The theory invites us to confront a paradox of being and becoming. Are we singular beings anchored in linear time, or are we fluid composites of possibilities scattered across the cosmic expanse? Current scientific discourse remains cautious, emphasizing that these parallel existences, if they do indeed exist, evade direct detection and empirical validation. Yet, the very act of grappling with their potential presence reshapes our understanding of selfhood and destiny. It challenges the comforting notion of a single, coherent narrative, presenting instead a kaleidoscope of selves living out the echoes of choices and chance. This multiplicity can be thought of not as a fragmentation of identity but as an expansion of the self's potential, an intricate dance where each version, though separate, shares a common origin. It compels us to ponder how much of our self is defined by experience, memory, and choice, and how much might transcend these boundaries. Consider, too, how this perspective reframes the concept of regret and possibility. When we ache for what might have been, we do so with the implicit awareness that alternative paths exist, even if only in our imagination. If the universe contains parallel versions of ourselves, then somewhere, those missed chances and roads not taken have found life. This revelation can be both haunting and comforting, a spectral tapestry where every life is lived somewhere and every possibility is realized, not in some distant fantasy, but as a quiet counterpart in an unseen dimension. The emotional undercurrents of this idea run deep. There is a strange solace in the notion that our story is part of a vaster narrative, one that extends beyond the limits of personal experience and temporal flow. Yet, there is also an undeniable chill in the prospect that our sense of uniqueness and control might be less absolute than we believe. If countless yous exist beyond the veil of perception, what does that mean for free will, responsibility, and the legacy we endeavor to create? These questions pulse beneath the surface of scientific inquiry, framing a dialogue where reason and wonder converge. As our instruments and theories evolve, so too does our capacity to explore these frontiers with humility and rigor. While the idea of parallel selves strays into the realms of speculation, it is a speculation grounded in the very principles that govern the fabric of reality: superposition, entanglement, and cosmological inflation, concepts that revolutionized our understanding of existence itself within the last century. Whether future science will illuminate these hidden selves or relegate them permanently to the realm of metaphor remains to be seen. But the questions they inspire compel us to gaze more deeply into the mysteries beneath our immediate experience. In facing the possibility of other versions of ourselves, each living out alternative journeys, triumphs, and sorrows, we may find a new way of relating to our own lives. Perhaps it is not fear or envy that should prevail, but a profound empathy extended across dimensions and destinies. This idea, though speculative, invites a reshaping of our perspective, to perceive life not as a singular thread, but as a vast, intertwining tapestry wherein every choice and every chance echoes far beyond the self. In the end, whether or not a parallel you truly exists in another fold of reality, the very imagining of such a self invites us to reflect with awe and humility on what it means to be here, now, in this fleeting moment, a unique point shimmering briefly in the endless flow of possibility. And in that reflection, we touch something quietly infinite, the enduring mystery of life's boundless, ever-unfolding dance. Imagine for a moment that every decision you've ever faced didn't just define a path forward, but spun off an entirely new version of reality, one where you took the other route, made a different choice, or turned left instead of right. Current scientific frameworks, particularly those emerging from quantum mechanics and cosmology, hint at this unsettling, yet captivating possibility. According to some interpretations of quantum theory, what we see as random or probabilistic events might actually correspond to branching realities, each as real as the one we inhabit. These ideas are neither idle fantasy nor definitive truth, they occupy a space where science meets the profound mystery of existence. Consider the phenomenon of quantum decoherence, often explained as the way a quantum system's superposed states interact with the environment, losing their quantum coherence and choosing a definite state when observed. Some researchers suggest that rather than collapsing possibilities into a single outcome, the universe may instead unfurl multiple, simultaneous outcomes, each corresponding to a different variant of now. While this remains a subject of intense debate, it offers a window into how the laws governing the microscopic world could, in theory, be reflected at a cosmic scale where entire universes might be spawned by these quantum choices. Yet, these parallel realities, if they exist, are staggeringly alien to our conventional experience. Imagine them not as neatly stacked layers or distant, mirror-like worlds, but more like an immeasurable forest of countless branches, each path representing a version of existence diverging from a seemingly insignificant moment. Picture a split second in your life, a glance, a word, a single step. Down one branch, your story unfolds with that detail intact, down another, it is altered. In some branches, you might have pursued a different passion, met different people, or even lived through entirely unrecognizable circumstances. Expanding this contemplation leads us to an unsettling implication. These parallel selves could be living out their own triumphs, failures, loves, and tragedies, real lives as vivid and authentic as the one you see reflected in your mirror. The possibility challenges not only our sense of uniqueness but also the boundaries of personal identity. Does the you in this moment capture the whole truth of your being? Or is it but one variant in an entangled cosmic narrative, shared with an infinite family of selves dispersed across the dimensions? Scientists examining the nature of cosmic inflation provide yet another intriguing angle. This rapid early expansion of the universe, which current models suggest may have produced bubble universes, implies that what we call reality could be but one bubble among countless others. Each bubble might host different physical constants, histories, even laws of physics, wildly different arenas where divergent versions of life unfold. Within this framework, the concept of multiple yous stretches beyond the purely quantum and metaphysical into a cosmos sprawling with unpredictability and novelty. To bring this closer to home, consider emergent patterns in nature, like snowflakes or river networks. Each is singular, formed by the interplay of deterministic laws and chance conditions, unique yet produced by the same underlying rules. In a similar manner, universes that branch from the quantum foam or bubble from cosmic inflation could be variations on a universal theme. Some might host Earths that bear close resemblance to our own, others might diverge so profoundly as to be unrecognizable. And in those variations, countless what-if are played out, quietly and relentlessly. All of this invites a profound meditation on the fragility and resilience of existence. If alternate versions of ourselves coexist in hidden folds of reality, what does that mean for the choices we make here, now? Are we isolated architects of a singular life, or nodes in a vast, multidimensional web where every decision sends ripples through infinite reflections? The emotional weight is considerable, the knowledge, if it can ever be grasped, that somewhere, a version of yourself may be living out the road not taken, the dream not pursued, the love not embraced. Finally, there's the paradox of observing such a reality. Our memories, our sense of continuity, our consciousness, anchor us to a singular frame of experience. If parallel versions exist, their influence is as intangible as a specter, beyond reach but hauntingly present. It reveals that identity may not be fixed but fluid and layered, perhaps resonating softly across these unseen dimensions, like echoes in a vast cathedral of existence. Current scientific inquiry rarely ventures beyond the edges of observable evidence, yet within theoretical physics, the notion of parallel selves lingers as a provocative symbol, at once unsettling and inspiring. It prods us to reconsider not just the structure of the cosmos, but the nature of selfhood, choice, and connection. In contemplating the possibility of other versions of ourselves, we confront a deeper truth, that our reality may be far more intricate, mysterious, and wondrous than the surface of our everyday experience can reveal. And in this silent cosmos of veiled multitudes, we find the ultimate invitation to explore what it truly means to be human, alone yet infinitely many, fleeting yet eternal. But what if time itself is not the linear stream we perceive, a steady current flowing from past to future, but instead a vast ocean of possibilities, where every moment branches endlessly? This idea challenges our most fundamental sense of existence. The passing of time anchors our identity, giving us a continuous narrative, an unbroken story of self. Yet, according to some interpretations of quantum mechanics and the embryonic framework of quantum gravity, time may be more woven and layered, a multidimensional tapestry where past, present, and future can coexist or intersect in ways beyond our everyday grasp. If parallel versions of ourselves dwell within these temporal folds, then what does it mean for that story we hold so dear? Imagine consciousness not as a single thread but as an intricate weave, perhaps a vibration that resonates along countless dimensions. Recent explorations in neuroscience and theoretical physics propose that consciousness might arise from complex interactions of quantum processes in the brain, although these ideas remain highly speculative. In such a view, consciousness could be akin to a hologram where every part contains the whole, suggesting that the self is not confined to a single place or moment. Could it be that our awareness subtly overlaps, flickers through, or even communicates with these parallel selves? Not in any overt or detectable way, but as faint ripples or shadows at the edge of perception. This possibility does not demand mystical leaps but invites contemplation on how deeply interwoven our reality might be. Looking further, the implications extend beyond identity into our understanding of cause and effect. Classical physics considers determinism a cornerstone: actions cause predictable results. Yet, the unpredictable behavior at the quantum level forces us to reconsider. The many-worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, for instance, suggests that all possible outcomes occur, splitting into separate realities. While still controversial and far from universally accepted, it reframes causality as a sprawling, branching construct. This raises a poignant question: if every choice we make unfolds into countless alternative realities, what significance do our decisions hold in this immense cosmic expanse? Does meaning diminish in an ocean of infinite versions of you, or does it deepen as a singular beacon amid the enormity? In the human experience, meaning arises not solely from external validation but from a narrative we craft, an ongoing act of self-creation. If parallel selves truly exist, could our sense of individuality be both a beautiful illusion and a profound truth? Perhaps each version of ourselves is a unique expression of a deeper underlying reality, akin to different brush strokes on the same cosmic canvas, distinct yet connected. This perspective transcends mere survival or success. It invites a compassionate awareness that every choice, every thought, could be mirrored and magnified in unseen ways. It challenges us to cultivate presence, empathy, and authenticity, knowing that our you is part of a far richer, more complex story. Moreover, the parallel universe concept quietly nudges us to revisit the mysteries of time's arrow, the directionality towards entropy and decay. If versions of ourselves inhabit alternate timelines, some branching towards growth and renewal, others towards stagnation or collapse, then our lived reality might be one chapter among many in a sprawling multiverse narrative. In this sense, death and loss might be reinterpreted not as absolute ends but as transformations or transitions within the fabric of existence. While this remains profound speculation, it offers an alternative lens through which to view mortality not as an erasure, but a reconfiguration of consciousness across dimensions. Philosophers have long debated the hard problem of consciousness, why subjective experience arises at all. Parallel selves add a layer of depth to this puzzle by suggesting that consciousness might not be isolated but distributed, perhaps existing in degrees or states across realities. Could our awareness be a node in an immense network of being, flickering on and off as different threadlines pull taut or slacken? Such a concept stretches beyond the limits of current science, yet it aligns with certain strands of mysticism and ancient thought, where the self is simultaneously singular and multiple, finite and infinite. This idea also touches an utterly human yearning, the desire to know ourselves deeply, to find coherence amid chaos. If another version of you experiences life differently, makes choices you did not, feels joys or sorrows you avoided, it can provoke a complex emotional response. It might spark envy, relief, or even grief. But it might also seed hope. Hope that existence is not a closed book, that identity is a prism reflecting endless variations of light. If the universe is a grand experiment of possibilities, then our sense of self is the experimenter and the observed, caught in an eternal dance of becoming. As we navigate this reflection, we must gently remind ourselves that these ideas remain speculative, suspended between the edge of scientific inquiry and the boundless realm of human imagination. They do not diminish the reality we inhabit but deepen its mystery, transforming the simple question "Who am I?" into a gateway to infinite wonder. In this quiet reverie, perhaps the darkest prospect, the existence of countless versions of ourselves scattered across parallel worlds, becomes a luminous gift. For within that vast multiplicity lies a profound affirmation that consciousness, in all its fragile complexity, is a cosmic phenomenon worthy of awe, curiosity, and relentless exploration.